Your full name
Leonard A. Manniccia,
and where do you currently live
110 West Erie Street,
and what community?
Oswego, New York.
And how old are you today?
I'm 88 now.
And when did you serve in the military?
1943 to 46, March of 43 to
And what
1946.
and what branch of the service were you in?
The United States Army.
And right now we're in Oswego in the county legislature's office building. My name is Jim Reagan. Where were you born and when were you born?
1923 in Oswego, New York, November 5th.
And what was your pre-war education?
I was working in a machine shop.
And
I was drafted.
And where'd you go to school before that?
Oswego High School.
And had you graduated from high school?
No, but I got a GED from there.
And so you went to work at a machine shop?
Yes.
And and what were you doing at the machine shop?
I run a turret lathe.
And so then you got then what happened?
Then I got drafted into the Army.
What year was this?
March 15th, I think 1942, was it? Yeah.
Now, where were you when Pearl Harbor happened?
Pearl Harbor, I was home yet. That's when I went in. Well, I was going to go in the Canadian Army with this other lad. We were going up to Canada and volunteer. I quit high school.
Now, back up just for a sec. You were in high school when Pearl Harbor happened?
Yes.
And where were you physically when you heard that the Japanese had attacked?
Home over the radio.
And what was your initial reaction?
I says, I don't know what I'm doing working. I says, I just soon go up and fight. This other lad wanted to go. He got a hold of me and he says, let's go up to Canada. We'll join the Canadian Army.
Now, were you shocked when you heard that the Japanese had
Yes.
attacked?
Yes.
What was your feeling at the time at the idea that this had happened?
I felt it wasn't right. And I says, if we could do anything, we weren't in the war then. So this lad says, he says, let's go up to Canada. And I quit.
Now, what grade were you in at that point?
I was in second year high.
And so, how old would you have been?
I'm probably 18, 17.
So your friend says, let's go join the Canadian Army.
Yeah.
So then what happened?
So my father wouldn't let me go. He says, you get back in school, go back to school. I says, no. So then I went to work in the machine shop. But I was drafted anyways. About 18 months later, they drafted me.
So when you, so where did they first send you?
We went to Camp Otis, Massachusetts, in a searchlight radar outfit.
Had you chosen that field?
No, they sent a whole bunch of us from here, from Syracuse and Oswego County and all that area. They sent us all to Fort Niagara first and then to Fort Edward, Mass.
Now, did you know what a radar?
I've never seen one.
So what was it that they trained you to do?
Well, most of our work was at night. We would trace these airplanes if they were flying at night with these powerful searchlights and the radar. And then the artillery would try to shoot them down.
So when you got to Massachusetts, and what specifically were...
My job?
Yeah.
I was a radio operator.
And so so first they had to train you how to operate a radio.
Yes.
And then, what was your role in that with the radar?
Transmitting between headquarters and the radar group that we were assigned to, or if you were assigned to a carrier light, because the radars would tie up with the carrier lights too. They would either put you with a main radar or a carrier light, and we would transmit our things back and forth between headquarters and the different systems.
And so it would be your job to, if the radar people had detected something, they would then relay information on
Right.
where it appeared to be, give that information to you,
Yes,
and then you would radio it to headquarters, which would then send direction to the guys
artillery.
with the artillery
Yeah.
on where to aim and
Right.
what to be.
Yeah, how many planes and all that.
Now, so after you were trained, then what happened?
Well, they broke up our outfit. We went down to Fort Stewart, Georgia, and after the Battle of the Bulge, I guess they lost so many men. And they sent us to advanced infantry school at Fort Gordon, Georgia, to another, and we fired every weapon that the infantry had.
Now, at this point, D-Day had already occurred.
Yes,
And where were you when D-Day occurred?
I think we were down in Fort Stewart, Georgia, slated to go to the Pacific.
Now, when you heard that the Allies had launched the invasion, what did you think?
I said, well, it's about time that we did, start getting in where we should be and get this thing over with. And they broke up our outfit, but we went down there, and I knew the major in charge there at Fort Gordon, and he wanted me to drive his Jeep. He says, you know where you're going? I says, no, sir. He says, you're going in as a replacement. He says, over in Europe, in the infantry. I says, if that's where I gotta go, I says, but I didn't come in the Army to drive a Jeep, sir. He says, you wanna go? I says, yes, sir. He says, okay. He says, I'll give you a 2-week furlough. He'd shipped all my buddies out. I got a 2-week furlough because I went to school with his daughter. And after that, I was a report to Fort Taunton, New York. We were there, and good God, they were feeding us everything, steaks and ice cream and everything. He says, this can't be the real Army. I don't know what's going on here. So
Terrible thing, them treating you that way.
yeah, after 2 days of that, they says, well, you're leaving tomorrow night, 9 o'clock, we're getting on a train and going down to Port POE down to New York. So we did, we got on a train that night, went down to New York, 9 o'clock, we pulled up to the docks there, and we got off, and I see this big thing there. I says, what the devil is that? It was the Queen Mary. They were putting us on. They were loading all day, and they were still loading them at 9 o'clock at night. There were 15,000 of us on there. We were eating in the swimming pool, all over 24 hours a day they were feeding us. And we left all alone. After they loaded the ship, I think about midnight, we started out in the dark, unescorted over to Europe, zigzagging every 4 or 5 minutes. That thing was really moving.
That was to avoid the submarines.
Yes, yes. And finally, when we got over towards Scotland, holy God, they had airplanes, dirigibles, and everything else over the ship, because they didn't want me to get that with all the troops on there. And we got in all right into Scotland.
So what was it like with 15,000 troops on the Queen Mary, you said?
The Queen Mary, we were sleeping out on the deck every other night, but they had the deck all enclosed and all the windows on the top deck, all plywood and stuff over. And we'd take our sleeping bags and go out and lay on the deck, and then the next night they would put us back in a room, and we switched back and forth.
How were the rooms?
The rooms were too bad, but it wasn't the best. And you had fresh water, a couple hours a day, fill your canteen and everything, and you washed up with salt water. You might just as well forget about washing. They had special soap and stuff, but you washed anyways.
So you arrived in Scotland?
In Scotland.
And so what happened then?
then we got on trains and they shot us over to the other end. I don't know where it was, whether it was Scotland or England, and we got on Liberty ships, and they brought us over into France, Le Havre, France.
And so you landed in France?
Le Havre, France.
So when you got off the ship, what was going on?
Oh my God, they brought us into this old fort. The buildings were all bombed out. Everything was a mess. There wasn't one building there with a roof on it. I mean, that they had shelled and bombed, you know, when we went in there. Then they put us on trucks and they brought us up to Liège, Belgium, in Old Repo Depot. We stayed there for 2 days. And this tech sergeant was in charge. He interviewed you. He says, "You got a radio operator spec number." He says, "You know where you're going?" I says, "I don't know, Sarge, where I'm going." He says, "You're going in the infantry." He says, "You want the infantry?" I said, "Where are you going to send me?" He says, "We need men in a tank outfit." I looked at him, I says, "I don't know. I think I'd rather be in the infantry." He says, "I generally don't do this." He says, "But I'm going to let you think this overnight." He says, "They're out in the mud, they're in the snow, they're in everything." He says, "In the tanks," he says, "you eat better. You're out of the mud." I says, "No." I said, "I'll take my chances on the ground." So the next day I had to go back next morning. He said, "Well, lad, did you make up your mind?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Take the infantry." Got up, shook hands, "Good luck. We'll see you." So that day there, they took, if you had glasses, and they give you a gas mask, a rifle, overshoes, overcoat, and ammunition, and a couple of grenades and all this stuff, and then threw us on our trucks and brought us up to Liège, Belgium. And from Liège, again, we went up a little ways with trucks. Then we had to walk up to the 9th Infantry Division. I was assigned to the 9th Infantry Division, 60th Infantry Regiment, Company L, 3rd Battalion, 3rd Platoon.
So when you got to the 3rd platoon, how many of you, was it just you going to the platoon,
No.
or were there several of you?
There was several. There must have been, I bet you 15. So they lost, they got in a hell of a fight. They lost a lot of men.
So how many people were in the platoon that you were hooking up with?
Well, generally there's 30 in a platoon.
Okay.
And God, I think the better part of us were all rookies, and they were all.
So there were 15 of you joining up with the platoon, and how many were in the...
4 or 5 here, and, you know, the rest there. They just scattered them out and made the squad up again.
So there were like 10 people in the platoon, and then the 15 of you came in and hooked up with them?
No, all told there's 30.
Okay, so there were 15 of them and then 15 rookies
Yeah.
hooking up with them.
Right.
So what kind of response did you get from the guys who had been through
Combat.
D-Day and you know, the intervening days in between? What date was this about?
I'd say about March 7th,
All right, so
1945.
So at this point, they had been, let's see, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. All right, so they'd been in Europe for 8 months, and then you guys, you know, come in. What was the reaction to you guys' replacements?
They were good. They were good. But you got real close after you were with an Alpha for a while. And we had, as a matter of fact, a PFC was in charge, but he was a tech sergeant before, and he had come all the way from Africa. This lad had, Floyd Bowman, and he placed us out in different squads. He says, "Get out, dig your hole, the foxhole." But our outfit was the first outfit over the Remagen Bridge. I was with Lieutenant General Courtney H. Hodge, and he was with the 1st Army, but we were the 9th Infantry Division, and 60th Infantry Regiment, Company L, in the 3rd Battalion, 3rd Platoon, I was with. And he assigned us to them. But they were good. The older guys, they took care of you.
What would they tell you first?
He says, well, it's kind of be hectic up there, and but you'll learn. You'll learn.
So when you arrive at the platoon, what's the first thing they have you do?
Well, we're in this old farmhouse, and he started assigning us. It's just like the movies. He had a wine bottle with a candle in it. What did you do? What did you do? And I told him, I says, there's a radio operator. He says, we don't take any radio operators here. He says, you're a rifleman. Out. You know, start digging. So we got out and start digging. Jesus, this is hard. The ground was hard. It was March. And it was frozen. And then some guys start smoking cigarettes. Rookies. Shells start coming in. Oh, I didn't sleep the rest of the night. By the end of the morning, the hole was about 4 foot deep, and this other guy and I, we kept going all night. I says, what the devil are we getting into here?
Are you saying that they had seen the matches
Yeah.
when the guy had lit the cigarette from the rookies?
Yeah.
And then they had targeted that?
Start throwing 88s in all around the hill where we were. We were out on this hill. So that was our first day. I said, wow. We dug the hole all night. And he says, okay, in the morning, moving out.
Perfectly good hole.
Yeah. And for that bridge, they had airplanes coming over trying to blow out the Remagen Bridge. That was the only bridge that was left in Germany. And we were the first ones to get across that bridge. And they had a jet. At the time, they were sending this jet over. Every day that guy would come over and drop a bomb. But there was, I'm telling
They had
you,
a German jet?
a German jet.
And
We
it-
didn't have anything. All they had was a P-38s and all these different things. And they tried to catch them, and they couldn't get nowhere near them. We didn't even know what the devil it was. And then they would send rockets. These big rockets would sound like a Model T Ford coming over. You'd hear this thing, and then all of a sudden it would drop. They were short. They didn't hit the bridge.
Now, had they told you the importance of that bridge?
Yes.
And so what was it that they told you?
They says, every day somebody say, well, the bridge had been knocked out, we're cut off. But in the meantime, they had thrown pontoon bridges on the side, these rubber rafts. And they put boards and stuff across to run tanks and the trucks across, which they kept running across. And we were up there, we thought we were always cut off. They'd tell us 2 or 3 days, they said, you're cut off from your supplies. But we weren't. But finally the bridge did get cave in, and a bunch of engineers were killed. They were working on it, trying to take all the fuses and the bombs off, because this German captain was supposed to blow the bridge up, but he never fulfilled that order. Hitler had him shot. He sent this major up, and they had him shoot that captain because he didn't blow up the bridge.
Now, when you guys had gotten to the bridge, had anyone else arrived at the bridge at that point? Americans?
Oh yeah, we had tanks. We had 3 tanks with our outfit, which come over with us, and we were fighting right along up in there.
And what did you find? Were the Germans still at the bridge?
Oh, after we got in, yes, it was holy hell over there. They were the last of the good Wehrmacht fighters. And what they did is they would put a couple of S-men behind the Wehrmacht. The Wehrmacht were like the regular army. Them guys weren't bad, but the SS were fanatics. And they says if we went to go back, they had orders to shoot them. They would shoot them. And he says, if we went ahead, you guys were shooting us. He says, what choice did we have? So, but a lot of them did, they surrendered. We had a lot of them surrender.
So how long did it take to capture the bridge?
It wasn't that long. We went right over it. That's what surprised everybody. Because General Bradley called up Eisenhower and told him, he says, General Hodges got his troops over the bridge. He said, well, tell them to keep going and bring everything you got, everything over there that you can. And that's, I guess, when they sent Patton and all the artillery come up. But I'm telling you, that artillery, when they start firing, you could walk across there on the artillery's shells. There were so many, they would come down where we were, in the, around the foxholes and stuff. You had to be careful. But it was tough.
So what did you think?
He says, what the hell did I get into? I should
Were you missing that tank at that point?
I did miss the tank at that part. Because when things did get extra tougher, they would put us on the tanks, we'd ride on the tanks, and they had a better ration. We got 6 little cans of sea rations, they call them, every day. They'd give you at 5 o'clock, you get your ammunition, your water. If you used grenades, and if you used a rifle, fired any a lot of your ammunition, you had a big ammunition belt. They would, give you 6 more cans of rations, and your ammunition, grenades and stuff, they'd re-thing you. But then we got at this one place, they called it 3-Time Hill. It took us 3 times to get the hill. They had what they call a Royal Tiger tank, and their tanks would knock our tanks out every time. We lost 2 tanks trying to take that hill. And a number of men. And they knocked our tanks out every time. We only had 3 tanks with our company, but we lost 2. And we pulled back, so finally the captain says, he says, pull back. He says the next day it cleared up, and they called for the Air Force. The Air Force come up, and they were just start dropping some bombs. And that tank took off, so then we took the hill. But we lost all of our Bazooka Men. And I was in my hole, I was cleaning my rifle, snow on the ground. The sergeant come over, drops this thing alongside my hole. What's that? He says, it's a bazooka. I said, I've never seen one. Which ends the shell come out? You'll learn. I said, thank you. He dropped 3 shells, 9 pounds apiece. I had to put the bazooka together. I'd never seen one. But the next day, they took us out of the front lines, 6 of us, because we lost all the other guys. They were killed or wounded, trying to knock out that Royal Tiger. And they brought us back to a stone quarry, and they tied this rope to these stone carts, and we walked back in the snow and the slush and played out there, and it snowing all day, wet snow, shooting at them carts all day. So when it got dark, we went back up to the line again. We were qualified then.
So you get up to the line, you're carrying this bazooka. How much does a bazooka weigh?
That didn't weigh much, but the shells were 9 pounds apiece.
And how many shells were you carrying?
3. I had a gas mask, a bandolier. They didn't give me a rifle yet, or I had the rifle and the bandolier, all the ammunition around me, 2 grenades, a shovel. What the devil else? Oh, and I had a blanket with my half a tent, and I tied a rope onto that, and I put my 2 shells in there, and the 1 shell in bazooka I kept in all the time. But that wouldn't shoot unless...
So how many pounds of stuff were you carrying with the 27 pounds of ammo?
Overshoes, overcoat, gas mask, and all this stuff. I told the sergeant, I says, hey, I can't make it. I says, God, I'm only a short guy. I'm the smallest guy in the outfit, and you give me all this garbage. He says, that's your problem. He wasn't a nice guy. But anyways, I threw the gas mask away, I threw the overshoes away. What the devil else? I kept the shovel, because that's what you dig.
Those come in handy.
And that's what you dig your hole with. And what the devil else? Oh, and the rifle. So I told him, I said, look, you gotta give me something else. I says, I can't hit the ground with all this stuff. And he says, well, wait till somebody gets hit that's got a pistol, we'll get you a pistol. Finally, the second lieutenant got hit, and they give me his pistol. They took the rifle and the belt, and that was a little better. At least all I had was my bedroll there with the 2 shells in the bazooka then.
So when was the first time you had to fire the bazooka in combat?
We were trying to get that tank, because we were out there and it was snowing. There was about that much snow that day, and you see 11 guys like this with their hands on their head laying in the snow, no rifles. And then I said to the sergeant, I says, what happened there? He said, they're not taking prisoners. He says, that's that tank. He says, well, we're on that 3-time hill. He says, we gotta get that. And these guys were from the south, they were nuts. At night, he says, we're gonna go out tonight and see if we can get that tank. I said, what are you gonna do? I says, you don't want me. He said, we'll make Molotov cocktails, you wanna go? I says, no, I'm not going. Some of the guys went, my assistant went, and he got killed. I told him, I said, Fred, don't go. I said, you stay here with me. I says, you're supposed to wire that up. He's supposed to wire it and hit my helmet when I had the tank and thing, but he got killed. At night, I told him not to go. So they give me another kid the next day, and he was just as good. He was good, though. But we finally got it. It's just after 3 or 4 more days, we got him. And
So how did you take out the tank?
with the bazooka. I hit the front sprocket on it there. Because if you missed and they'd take a thing, they had you. That's why.
I mean, they had machine guns and
Machine guns in that big 88, or
Yeah.
85 millimeter, or 80, no, the 88, and they would shoot that.
And they found it really annoying to have bazookas shot at them.
Oh yeah, because that's how we lost all the other 6 guys. But then we got into this other town. We were going into Fredericksburg, and that day there I was.
What country are you in at this point?
Pardon?
What country are you in at this point?
We're in Germany yet.
You're in
Yeah,
Germany.
Oh, I was in Germany. My 2 battle stars are from Germany, Rhineland and Central Germany. I got 2 battle stars. And this was Fredericksburg. It was supposed to be a hospital town. They had a white flag with a red square in the middle. And we figured, well, it's a hospital town, so we're leading in, we're going in, and they got mines on the road for the tanks, not for us. But I was in the culvert, and this half-track come up the road with a red cross on it. And I said, what the devil? Then he started firing. He started shooting with a 20 millimeter gun and machine gun off the half-track, shooting at us. And guys are jumping all over, trying to get out of the way. And this Sergeant Mills was behind me. He got shot. Christ, he was wide open. They hit him with a 20 millimeter. And I was down in the culvert, and this other tech sergeant up there, I forget his name, Decker, I think it was. He was up there, he was hollering, he was shot. He was shot here in the leg, the sniper got him in his right leg, and he couldn't move. I said, well, I'll come up and get you. So I crawled up there, and I dragged him down into the culvert and called for the medics. The medics come up, put a tourniquet on, and God, they were taking honest to God. They had snipers and machine guns across the road. After that half-track pulled back, he took right off. He hit it, and he run. He took right off. I couldn't get him. And So I laid there after I brought Decker down into the culvert, and this sergeant come up from the tank. We had new tanks that we had, they had one with a 90mm on. They come up with the newer tanks. Because the older tanks only had 75mm guns. And they also have them German tanks like that. They couldn't penetrate them unless they had a direct hit somewhere. And, but anyways, the sergeant says, what's going on? I says, keep your head down. I said, you got snipers, machine gun nests, everything over there. So he called back to the tank. He says, move in. So the tank moved in a little, but they had to get the Corps of Engineers up to get the mines out of the road. Them guys come up and we covered them. We fired like hell. We had a couple of machine gunners and the BARs. They were firing across the street. That's where all these snipers and stuff were. And they come up, they got the mines out. And he says, okay, he says, open up the 50 caliber machine gun. They shot about 2 boxes of ammunition. So the tank, he says, move ahead and come on in. They start moving in, and the German Panzerfaust, it was like our bazooka. He shot at the tank, but he missed it. That was it. 2 of the big ones, he hit the big ones. Tree, everything, up in the tree. Them guys that were over there. But he cleared it out, and then things were pretty good. Then we started a fight. We started going hospital to hospital. The first 2 buildings were hospitals with German prisoners in there. We took them there. There was no fight or anything there. They were all wounded and half out of it, everything in there. Then we got down into the center of town, but in the meantime, we lost a lot of men back there. We lost about, out of our squad, I think, well, there was the first scout, Sandy, Sergeant Cox, and myself were left when we got through. 3 men out of 12, out of my squad. And when we got through town, we took the town about 4 o'clock. We had house fighting that. And there was a big gym down in the center of town there. And they started bringing some of the German wounded in there. And I'm talking with this German officer. He trained here in the States as a doctor. He spoke fluent English. Here's my watch. I says, I don't want your watch. He says, why? That's the first thing you Americans takes. I says, no. If I could call the German watch on me, I says, I got one. I says, thank you, keep your watch. I don't want it. But he was a fairly decent guy, and they brought this one guy in. My God, he looked like a sieve. He was all shot up in a poncho. They were carrying him in, a German soldier. And he laid him down there. He says, once you get to work on him, he says, he's not going to make it. He says, he'll be dead shortly. He said, not going to make it. I said, well, I'll see you. He says, take care, be careful. So we went through him that night. And then, he was a lieutenant then, our lieutenant. Because the captain got hit. And our lieutenant says to my squad leader, he says, take your men. He says, and get up on outpost. He says, I only got 2 guys left. He says, the rest back there wounded or gone. He says, well, take a man out of another squad. The other squads were hit too. They had 2 hit or 3 hit, 4 hit, but we were leading. That's why we caught hell. And they give us this Corporal Egan. So they set us up on outpost, and we get up there, and about 8 o'clock we hear all this noise out on this road. It's a big crossroad there. This is outside of Fredericksburg, yeah. And we're there, and Sergeant Cox, he says, I'm going out and see what all that noise is. So we had a telephone. We pulled a telephone wire up with us while we went up on the outpost. So you go out ahead, and the guys were back in the house, one of the houses back in the village there. the rest of the company was, what was left of it, was in this house. And we pulled the wire up, went up. The four of us, let's see, the four of us were up there. And we put Egan in the back, the corporal, and Sandy and I were up in front. And Coxie went out to see what was going on out the road. Because he says it was a friendly working party. He got out there, and it was so dark that night. You know, it was in the winter, like, yeah, it's still dark as hell. And he walked right through them. They were Germans. He says, "Get your cans back here." He says, "There were Germans out there." He says, so he's arguing with the lieutenant back there. The lieutenant says, "Leave them out there." He says, he called that lieutenant everything in the book. He says, "I got 3 goddamn good men up there." He says, "I don't want them to get killed." He says, "I want to get them out of there." He says, "You guys come on in." And the captain's hollering, or the lieutenant, "Stay there." So naturally we stayed. He says, "We're going to start calling in artillery." So they start. I says, "You got an artillery observer, send the observer up." He was a captain. I said, "Send the observer up here." "We don't know how to call it." He said, "We'll start throwing in the shells. You holler ahead, left, right, front." He said, "Okay." Started throwing them in. So they start throwing in artillery shells. "Go ahead, a little more to the right, more to the right." They throw some more shells in. And finally he says, "Okay, you got them now," because when they throw the shells in, they hit the trees, and it's like a shower. These shells burst. They go all over. You could hear them start hollering over there. They were getting hit. It says, "Throw a barrage in, you got them now." And they threw one shell short. They broke the phone line. I said to Sandy, the other kid, he's a PFC, I'm a PFC. And this Egan, he's a corporal. I says, "What are we gonna do now?" I said, "We have no transmission, no nothing with the company." So Egan says, "I think we better get out of here." So we start back. This is about midnight. Yeah, it was about midnight or better. And I said, "Well, I'll lead." I'm the younger guy. He says, I said, "Sandy, you're married, Egan's married, I'm not married." I'll lead. Grab my belt. Because it was so dark you couldn't see. Then we took a chance of getting shot by our own men. Because our own men were out watching the tanks, our tanks. You do the same as the Germans did. Watch your tanks at night. And he says, "Let's go." So we went back, and we got back about 6 o'clock in the morning. We got back to where the thing was. There was a fence around the house. We tore the board off the fence, went in the house. And this one kid there, this AR man's there, he says, "What are you guys doing here?" I said, "I don't think it's any of your damn business." He says, "Well, I'm going to see the lieutenant." So we went and told the lieutenant. Oh, jeez, he come in there, he was wild. I said, "The phone line, you cut on us." I says, "What the hell do you want us to do?" He said, "God damn it." He says, "Get out of here, come on." So he's walking up the road. We're walking in the ditch, the snow and the water, the snow is melting. We're walking in a culvert. I says, "If there's ever a son of a bitch, I hope they shoot that." So we're dragging a new line up with us. And we got just at the crossroad in the ditch, in the water and everything. We're standing there. I says, "Sandy," "Sandy, I left my bazooka over there last night." I said, "What are we gonna do if they come through with a tank?" I said, "We're licked." He said, "What are you gonna do?" I'll crawl through that culvert." I says, "I gotta get that bazooka." I said, "That lieutenant knows I left the bazooka there. I think he'll have me shot." He said, "The hell with it." He says, "They're coming up later," which the rest of the company did. I says, "I gotta get that bazooka." He says, "Don't you go over there." So we stayed there, the 3 of us behind. There was a snowplow there, a big snowplow. And we could see where the Germans were. And they started coming up, the rest of the company come up then. And there was an L-shaped barn like this there. And Egan was back here, and Sandy and I were up here with the phone in front. But anyways, we got up there, and the lieutenant started setting the troops all out. And they set up machine guns and stuff. He says, nobody fires till I tell them to. And we're laying there, they were watching, I'm watching. And this one kid, this machine gunner, I see his feet, he started moving, oh, he's getting all the thing. And these prisoners, I don't think they even see us. They start getting up on the road, the German prisoners. And he opened up with a machine gun and he started firing, and he missed all of them. He was a captain after, that's why you could call him captain. But the lieutenant, boy, he was wild. He says, okay, now let's go. We gotta go in. So we started attacking. But in the meantime, they took off. They went the other way. They went up on this hill, this high hill. And there was a big house there that a lot of them were staying in that night. And we went in the house. And I said to Sandy, let's go up in the attic and see what's going on. So we looked up and we see them up on the hill. And he had his rifle yet, this first scout, and he started shooting up there. And they finally did come in under a white flag, because we shot quite a few of them, he shot quite a few of them. They come in, and they surrendered. And that was just one day.
So you were saying that at this point, the Germans really didn't want to fight.
No, the Wehrmacht. See, they were like our regular army. And the SS, they were fanatics. You couldn't deal with them.
So you think at this point the German public had enough of the war?
Yes, very much so.
What kind of, because at this point you're in Germany,
yes.
and you're advancing into the heart of Germany. What are you seeing from the man on the street?
They weren't bad. After the war, they were good with us. I mean, they were decent people, the better part of them.
So you said that. So what was the next thing that occurred?
Oh God, there was every day. It was the same thing. You're shooting at you. Another night there. Snowy night again, cold. And he says, the lieutenant again, go out, draw some small arm fire, see what they got out there. So.
You were supposed to go out and be a target?
Yeah. So.
What did you think of that?
That's what he says, that's what we gotta do. So the sergeant, but we had a good sergeant. He was good. And Coxie, Sandy, me, and this kid from California. They should have left home. But anyways, we were going out, we left the company, and we got out, and there was this hill, and there were 4 guys out there on an outpost, because you always put an outpost outside of town if you had men in town. They put 4 or 5 men out on an outpost like we were that night at Fredericksburg. And they said, where are you guys going? I said, we gotta go out and see what's out there, draw a small arm fire if we can. He said, oh, there's a lot out there. So we got up on this hill, and we get up on the hill, and all of a sudden they're shooting flares up in the air, the Germans are. They must have spotted us. And Coxie says, hit the ground. So we hit the ground there in the snow and stuff. We're laying there. They start throwing some shells in, and this kid started crying. I shouldn't be here. My father shouldn't be here. Just shut the heck up. This is bad enough without you crying. Coxie's telling me to shut up. But he kept crying. He was only, like myself, he was 18, 19 years old. But anyways, we laid there. It must have been up it's a couple hours. We didn't move because we were afraid to move because they were shooting 88s at us. But we knew they had that tank. There was another tank because we could hear them shutting the tank when they started throwing the 88 shells in. And it's on the side of the hill. So it's about 10 o'clock that night. We walked back down, and the guys on the outpost, he says, "Ah, you've made it." He says, "We thought you had it," because they were shooting at us for about an hour or two. He says, "No." He says, "We made it." So we went back and told them. He says they do have tanks and stuff out there, so the next day we had to prepare again and go in and attack. But every day was rough. It was no fun.
So where were you when you found out the war was over?
We were...
Or that the Germans had surrendered?
Right here, in that house right there. They told us the war was ended. They were going to bring us back to Austria. And that girl there, she come in from Berlin. She had a suitcase full of money. Irina was her name. And
Now, I'm showing this picture of you and your unit. Whereabouts were you guys at this point?
I think right outside of Berlin. They wouldn't let us go in Berlin. We could have taken Berlin, but the Russians, I guess, they'd made that agreement.
Yeah, they made that
They wouldn't let us
agreement.
go in. So we had to pull back over the river. And, but she had a suitcase full of money there. And her parents had been killed. Both of her parents were killed, she said.
And she's being hugged by one of the men in this picture.
Pardon?
She's being hugged by one of the men in that
Yeah,
picture.
he spoke German. He was German. So she lost her parents, both of her parents. She was a good kid.
And
She
so
was good.
she had a bag of money, you said?
Suitcase.
Suitcase.
That big, full of money. She worked in a bank, Berlin, when she left. And everybody was coming out of Berlin. They were surrendering to us. They didn't want to surrender to the Russians. We had a whole company come in, and a guy, it was his hometown. I forget the name of the town. But he says, "This is my hometown." He says, "and I got to surrender my company." He said, "I want to see your officer." We were out on outpost, this other guy, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I says, "Get ready." I says, "We're going to have a nice little battle here." He says, "Why?" I says, "There's a whole company of them coming down the road." But he didn't, he surrendered. He said,
How many of you guys were there?
2
There's 2 of you and a company of Germans are coming towards you,
with their officers.
and you figure that they're gonna fight.
Yeah.
And then
He wanted to surrender. He surrendered.
and did you guys shoot at them at all as they advanced?
No. We waited. I says, "Wait till they get here." I says, "We'll take a couple of them with us." I says, "We're not going alone." But then he surrendered. We stopped him and he surrendered. And he says, "I want to speak with your officer." So we brought him up to the house. The officer and the rest of the squad was up in this house. And Mac, I guess he'd taken his shirt off and everything that night. He didn't have his bars on. He was half asleep. He was a nice guy. And I said, "Put your shirt on." He said 9. He wouldn't speak to him because he didn't have just his underwear on, long johns. He said 9. I said, "Go put your shirt on." So when he put his shirt on, he come back out. He says, "Yeah." He says, "What's up?" I said, "He wants to surrender." I said, "He got a whole bunch of them out there." I says, "There's close to 150 men." He says, "You gotta be kidding." I says, "No." So he come out, they surrendered, they threw all their rifles on a pile there. And they had a couple of guys take them back prisoners, took them over and took them prisoners. But, geez, that was funny.
So is any point that you would like to make?
Pardon?
Any point that you would like to make about your experience?
Yeah, the time we were gonna have a chicken for supper.
Go ahead.
We were in this house. That's another one. They had machine guns, and that's, we didn't have smokeless powder, they had smokeless powder. And you didn't know where they were firing from half the time. Finally, we found out where the nest was. It was up back of this house, this farmhouse, nice little farmhouse. And so he says, well, he says, we gotta get it. He says, what do you think? I said, shoot a bazooka shell up there. He says, you got 3. I says, yeah, go shoot the shell up, knock it out. So we shot the shell up there, we knocked it out. And then we went up. And there was one guy who was still alive. This, I think it was, yeah, this lake. So, Jesus, the German. So we picked him up. We got a blanket, a couple of sticks, and put him on that. We brought him in the farmhouse there. We put him in the bedroom. There's a bed there. Laid him in there. Kind of felt sorry for the guy. So I went in. He wanted water. So he says to our medics, I says, Doc, why don't you give me a shot of morphine? I says, that guy's suffering. So I'm not going to waste my morphine on him. I said, come on, for God's sake. The guy's dying. He says, give him something. He says, nope. He says, you want to give him the water? Give him the water. So I said, I'll give him the water. So I took a couple out of the house, in the water, and the guy was dead by the time I got back there. He says, well, you don't have to give him the shot. He said, no, we got to get him out of here. I said, well, get him out the way we got him in. So he put him back on the stretcher. We threw him out behind the barn. Then at night, there were minefields out there, personal minefields. But the engineers had marked it off with white tape. And at night, we had to go out, and we were going over the German Autobahn then, and there was a tunnel under the Autobahn. And you walk out past that dead guy, I'm scared to death. Jeez, the guy's dead. I go by that guy. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning. Says, so I go out there, go by him, we get way over as close as I could to the minefield. Go out, and under the tunnel, we stand there, just kind of watching all night, but nobody come over, nobody bothered us. And the next day, the rest of the company come up there, and there was a house over there again. And I said to Sandy, the first scout, I says, I think let's go over the house, see what's going on over there. So we go in there, we hear noise upstairs. I says, you stay back, I got the pistol. I says, is anything? I said, I'll shoot him. He said, okay. He says, so I went up, and I looked there. There was a guy there with the field glasses, that artillery observer we had. He's calling shells in on the next town to soften it up with his field glasses. He jumped in the air. What the hell are you guys doing here? I said, come over to see you. He said, what are you doing? He says, here, take a peek at the glasses. He hit a couple of oil tanks and stuff they had over there. And so we went back, and we got back. Went back to the house there, and this Sebastian, the AR man, he said, hey, Lenny, let me take your pistol. I said, why? What are you going to do with my pistol? He said, we're going to have chicken for supper. Oh, you're going to have chicken for supper? Yeah. Gee, that'll be good. So he gets out on the porch, there's a bunch of chickens running around. He's aiming the pistol. I said, for God's sake, shoot before the damn thing takes off. He shoots and he misses the chicken. I said, there goes supper. We get our old sea rations again. A little can of beef stew. But that's one of the funnier things that happened.
Any other points you'd like to make?
Yeah, that's about it.